Recently, Tumblr took action to purge all the boobies from the platform because short-haired former trophy wives were offended by the idea of porn on the internet. So Tumblr did what Tumblr does best and overreacted, sandboxing and basically killing off all lewd content on the platform. But there's tons of other interesting, strange, and creepy content on that platform, and today in this patron-funded video, we are going to be taking a look at vulture culture. Now, before we go any further, it's best to define what vulture culture is, and finding a clear definition is actually rather easy because the internet's most wonderful and ironically useful dictionary, Urban Dictionary, has a definition for us. Part of the practice of taxidermy, the act of vulture culture is to search for the remains of an animal and take it with the intention of using the remains for taxidermy. Skinning, using the bones, skeletons, etc. Now, this is a really okay definition of what vulture culture is, but I figure I might need to lay some of the foundation here a bit more, because vulture culture is a lot more than that. First off, vulture culture on Tumblr is essentially amateur taxidermy. The people in this do it as a hobby and to collect art. As vultures, they go and they look for the remains of dead animals and then use those remains to make pelts or basically anything you'd expect from a regular taxidermist. Now, where does the term vulture come from? Well, because they have to self-procure everything and hunters or people don't come to them most of the time, these people will go out looking for the animal corpses themselves, much like a vulture. Obviously, also like a vulture, they don't hunt these animals. In fact, vultures don't kill the animals. They already come across dead animals and then use those remains to make macabre art or weird surrealist skull mementos of a former animal's life. One of the most prominent features I saw in vulture culture was the skull collections, where they collect, clean, and curate and make collections of art for skulls, right? You will find vultures online either trading skulls with other vultures or purchasing skulls from vultures who live in an area where they can get that particular skull. Some vultures are genuinely actually real taxidermists and lead the community by giving them advice on what items to get to taxidermy their animals themselves. It's a grassroots taxidermy community. And yes, it's on Tumblr. Many vultures also seem to inhabit other cultures such as the alternative culture, or more specifically, a lot of them are Wiccans. A large majority of people who are vultures seem motivated by the Wiccan lifestyle to curate and kind of make art out of these animals. For example, I found this one post that reads, "When I left my apartment this morning, there was a little dead friend on my doorstep, a small rat who must have frozen to death during the night. I'm grateful that the goddess led us to each other. I'd hate to think his little body being thrown in the trash by maintenance workers. Instead, he'll be buried with the blessings and given new life to my plants. And when he's fully decomposed, I will save his bones and create a new beauty. In the meantime, there's a dead rat in my fridge." I also found another post that was pretty much just a prayer for roadkill. If you're curious, yes, many vultures actually get into the community by procuring roadkill. Basically, they'll walk down the side of the road till they come across an animal, and then that will be their first vulture project. Now, I'm not really well versed on Wiccan culture, but a lot of it does seem influenced by that, and the reason for that is as follows. Many of the vultures talk about as this is a way to help the animals pass on because they had an untimely, just awful death. You can often see the scars of a battle or them getting hit by a car, and so they feel that the death was restless or not good enough to help them pass on. Specifically, the witches that seem to do vulture culture are green witches, and many of them self-proclaim themselves to be green witches. I know it's a reductive way to explain it, but I found this definition on Wikipedia, the Wikipedia for witches. Yes, I'm serious. Anyway, a green witch focuses on nature using natural materials and energies. Green witches are often skilled herbalists and may enjoy gardening and wildcrafting as part of their practice. A green witch is often also dedicated to an environmentally friendly lifestyle. I make YouTube videos. I will make mistakes. A green witch often follows an earth-based spirituality. So basically, these green witches, you know, they celebrate the earth. You'll often find them using words like Mother Earth, Gaia, things like that. Anyway, if you guys are wondering what kind of class I am, I'm a rogue. My name is Richard Brokensword. I have great DPS, but, you know, I can't land a hit. At least I showed up. Another common feature in vulture culture is pretty much just placing small little tidbits in mason jars. You'll often see them either pinning bugs or placing these bugs in mason jars along with bones, making a little macabre art jar. All you have to do is research the Vulture Culture tab on Tumblr and you will see a thriving community of online taxidermists. I actually seriously have no problem with people doing this. Yeah, I will say this though, their posts can sometimes border on a little fetishistic and creepy, and I'm not really one for pictures of roadkill, but honestly they aren't hurting or harming anyone. If anything, they're just finding another use for animals that have really just outlived their usefulness. So why bother really saying it's bad when they're not hurting anybody? There's no reason for me to do that. In my opinion, no harm, no foul. Get it? Foul? Like a duck. Bazinga. Oh, but the video's not over because there is a specific divide amongst the vultures and the vulture culture community, which is a very strange debate. So, the patron who sent this to me, also, by the way, you should become a patron and subscribe. Just saying. Anyway, they expressed that their interest in vulture culture peaked around a controversy in the subculture. Now, this controversy revolves around a user known as Cummy Eyelids, whose real name is Lana. So Lana grew to popularity because she made really good vulture jewelry. Essentially, she made jewelry that contained bones and items or dead things that were really good. She was great at preserving remains and turning them into art, and that is how this job ended up in her lap. So you see, another user whose name is Haley had kept every single body part of hers for her entire life. This includes teeth, her hair, but most importantly, her most distal toe. Distal means the farthest from the center, so like the pinky toe. Okay, so you probably have a lot of questions. Why did this woman cut off her toe, for one? Why does she keep all of her body parts? Well, it turns out that she believes they have energy and power, and as a result of that, she has held on to them. Now, she didn't cut off her toe because she's a weirdo who wants toe jewelry. She actually had a medical condition that caused her toes to be imbalanced. Anyway, long story short, it came to the point where she needed to remove her toe. So she got it removed, and she asked to keep it. Obviously, the internet does what it does, and they thought that this woman cut off her toe because she likes her toe being cut off. But hey, whatever. Anyway, after this blew up, Lana got flooded with requests to work with human remains of all varieties and appendages. Anyway, Lana ended up working on a piece of toe jewelry, and this seems like a cut and dry thing. People got offended because she made toe jewelry. Family members and individuals who want to keep a piece of a loved one can do so with Lana's help. And hey, you know, it's not out of the normal for someone to be cremated and then to get jewelry filled with their ashes. So is this really any different? But that's not why Lana ended up in a serious controversy. See, this is part of her job. Now, Lana has a friend who went thrifting. One could say, Lana's friend got more bone than they bargained for. Anyway, Lana attracted the ire of the internet in a post where she said, "My baby girl Emily got this gorgeous antique partial human skeleton at a flea market for only 30 bucks. All she was told is that it's from a university, Beyond that, we have concluded it's female, and she was probably pretty young based on her petite size and non-pronounced brow line and unfused cranial sutures. If anyone has any further info, conclusions, based on the pics, please share it with us because we want to learn as much as we can. You can tell from some of the green moss and stains and rusty metal bits used for articulation that this cutie clearly has some interesting history. Now, finding dead human remains at a flea market is kinda creepy enough, but it got a little bit stranger when Tumblr decided to do what Tumblr does and be a backseat biologist. You are not an archaeologist. You're not edgy or cool because you decided to pose with the skeleton of a little Asian girl that was almost certainly obtained by gruesome and or disrespectful means and for attention on social media. There's a difference between donated cadavers and skeletons for science and taking some poor kid's skeleton and playing with it to make you look edgier. You're incredibly disrespectful and racist and plain ignorant. Your thought process is appalling. Obviously, Lana wasn't going to take this lying down and decided to fight the internet. The only difference between this specimen and what you call donated cadavers skeletons for science is that this one become too damaged and was retired from the scientific teaching facility where it ended up in the dirt at a flea market and my friend rescued it. You can stay upset, but this isn't going to change anything about this skeleton dude. Okay, so this gets really interesting because I don't know what a lot of these users were thinking if Lana and friend went grave robbing for their skeleton. Nor do I really think that we should be taking Lana's word on the gender and race of this skeleton when she is very much not a professional. So, backstory, because I feel it's important to this debate that happened on the internet. I used to be an exercise science minor, and as a result of that, I spent a lot of time around dead stuff, even dead human remains. I would mess around with bones a lot to understand their structure and their function. Like if I seriously wanted to, I could probably have stuck a femur in my pocket and walked out of class, and that's because these bones just sat in a plastic bin on the floor. And yeah, their remains are being used for science, so like they signed up for that. But like the fact of a whole skeleton walking out of a class or a university research setting is like really rare. Like either somebody fucking stole a skeleton or someone really wasn't doing their job. Anyway, the responses continue with more hot takes, such as, there's a very clear line between interest in the morbid and outright disrespecting what was once a living, breathing human being, and you've crossed it. Even disregarding the obvious discomfort, this girl did not consent and could not have meaningfully consented to you owning her remains. That is why people are offended. I don't hate you, I'm not sending this in anger, but you seem to either not get it or be deliberately not engaging with this, and I don't know which is worse. Lana responded, I don't care, she's dead! Okay, oh boy, this is a lot to unpack here, guys. Nice to know Lana respects the dead. This is the weirdest drama on the planet. There's a really good possibility this isn't even a real skeleton, like seriously. I will say this though about human remains ending up on the market. Like if a human remains like were donated to science, right? If they're using that skeleton for science and the skeleton is falling apart, you know, it's just like it's outlived its usefulness, that body will be retired. They will cremate it and either send it back to the family or just, you know, they cremate it. Like, I can't believe we're having the debate over whether or not Lana should be, like, getting consent from a person who's dead and was probably stolen from someplace else. Like, if it is a child, there's no way the child consented, and that means this was not a university skeleton. Like, it's a lot rarer than it would be. Anyway, speaking of fake skeleton, the internet continued. You sure you didn't take the skeleton post down because some anthropologist pointed out that it was a fake skeleton and that all the assumptions you made about its gender and age were BS, Lamau? It's definitely entirely real, haha. Bone clone anthro, never even saw the real pics, but I took the post down because my friend is too busy to deal with all y'all's redundant, ignorant questions and she doesn't deserve to be subjected on y'all. I, on the other hand, could give less of a fuck about y'all's words. Don't care. I'll say this, being a person with a PhD will give you so much credibility in conversation that it's hard to refute. So, you know, how convenient Lana took the post down. The only one that I could really get away with saying Lana could be right about is the gender, because that's really easy to tell if you look at the pelvic region of a skeleton. It's one of the ways that I used in school to remember, like, what's the difference between them. Here's the picture again to see the difference, and then here's the picture of the skeleton. Others even brought into question, what in the world is Lana doing with a real human skull? Why is she taking a picture with it? That's weird. Some people even asked, is it legal for Lana to own human remains like that? So I looked into it, and it turns out, it's not illegal. So, in an article by National Geographic, they said, quote, right now, most human skulls in the general U.S. market come from antique medical skeletons. In the late 1700s, medical schools had to provide skeletons for their students, and a large supply came from India. Hindered by changing laws in 1832 that put an end to unchecked grave robbing in the UK, British doctors pressured Indian people who dealt with the disposal of human remains to sell bones instead. But in 1985, one dealer was caught selling more than 1,500 child skeletons of unknown origin. India promptly banned the exporting of human remains over concern that people were being murdered for them. So, by that quote alone, you would begin to imagine there's a lot of funny business surrounding Lana's skull and her friend's skeleton. Because that either means the skeleton is an antique skeleton that was from a child murderer, or the remains of a child who was dug up in a foreign country. And by the way, they say the child's Asian, and that is one of the places that they went to after India started banning the exports of human remains. So yeah, either that skeleton is fake, or it could even possibly be the victim of an awful crime. I ended up looking it up, and it turns out there's only one company that ethically accepts skulls from donors. And obviously, they don't take children's skulls. That just is not happening. Also, if Lana's skull is not a grave rob and it is real, it's probably worth about $2,000. So, you know, if you guys got any skulls lying around and you want to sell them. All of this is really food for thought about the whole skeleton and human remains controversy in vulture culture right now. Personally, I'm of the camp that the skeleton's not real. I hope. But that skull does look real, so it's just a whole mess, guys. But I'll link the National Geographic article below because it's actually a really good read. I highly recommend you read it if you're interested in this like more professional side of this culture, because there's a large majority of people who actually sell and trade human remains on the internet, and it's legal. Up until recently, you could actually go on eBay and bid to buy a skull. So what do you think about vulture culture? What do you think about Lana and her friend? Do you think they're fibbing? You think they're grave robbers? You think they just stole a child's skeleton from a graveyard? Tell me your conspiracy theories about that all below, and tell me what you think about the culture of the vulture. I found it pretty interesting and entertaining. As always, my patrons bring the best video topics to the table. I love doing stuff like this. It's great. I have a lot of fun doing it. So definitely consider becoming a patron if you want to be a part of that process. Here's a patron who helped with this video. Big ups. I appreciate it, seriously. And I don't know when this video will come out in terms of things, so I might end up saying it in 2 videos, but I hit 100,000 subscribers today, and I don't know what to say, so I'm really happy about that. I've been doing this since I was like 13. I've been around for a while, you know, and I don't feel my content is really like gets noticed. So, you know, especially as I try things that don't necessarily fit like the algorithm, because I don't want to be just doing like Jake Paul, Logan Paul content, you know, like the whole like commentary shit. Like, if you guys know me, I don't like using that term to describe me, and I don't want to be pigeonholed into one type of content. So I really I appreciate it so much. I do. I've been doing this for a while, and I hope to do this more professionally. You know, I hope to one day have 1,000,000 subs. I hope, this is my dream. This is what I've been doing, and I've met a lot of amazing people because of it, and friends that are like family to me. I've met wonderful people. Everybody who's been at with me for some part of the journey. Thank you so much. There's countless people. Been doing it for a while. So, thank you. Seriously.